Good morning, H2 Show listeners. Drive Tribe, we are back. It is the Drive at 5 with Jeffrey. It is 5:45 this morning. It is a Thursday. Obviously, we didn't have a Tuesday show. Some people reached out, asked me if I was okay. I was good. I was just exhausted. I can tell you the story. We can start off with a story time if you'd like, so let's go ahead and do that. On Tuesday night, I was up late working on a presentation. I always overthink. That's part of the conversation today is how not to overthink, how to be more confident in decision making. Spoiler alert, we'll get right into that very, very quickly. But while doing that, I stayed up late to make that presentation happen. So we had some other things I had to do during the day, and the only time I was going to have time to do it was at night. And so in the process of doing that, it got really late. I'm sitting looking at my the clock going, 3 hours is probably not going to be enough, or 4 hours is probably not going to be enough if I have to get up around 4:45. And then, lo and behold, as things often do, when it rains, quote unquote, it pours. And so about 4 in the morning, Jenny comes knocking on the door, and she goes, "Hey, we got a problem." And I said, "What is that?" "Yeah, it's kind of raining in the house." And I was like, "What you mean?" And so it was coming out of the return vent, not a huge deal, a little bit of water, very minimal. But the drip pan was full on the AC unit, had to go out, had to do all the things you do, use the shop vac that I have stuck on the back porch, suck out the clog, get the water flowing again, dry out what a little bit got wet and keep it moving. But at 3, 4 in the morning or whatever it was, when you don't have a couple hours of sleep, that makes your bones hurt. And a lot of people I was talking to said, "Yeah, well, sometimes my bones just hurt when I wake up anyway." I said, "Yeah, I agree. We're getting old." But that's my story time for the day. I am so glad y'all are here because on this thought-filled Thursday, I want to talk about how to get you unstuck. So one of the things I find in my life, and you probably have seen this too, is you get into a position called the paralysis of analysis, right? You've thought through all the thoughts there are to think, especially if you have a neurospicy brain is the term that's used sometimes, neurodivergent way of thinking. A lot of folks that are either on the spectrum, have ADHD, those sorts of things, they talk about this paralysis that happens because you think of every step that might be facing you, even on the simplest of decisions. So today's show is about how to be confident, not cocky, but confident, and then overcome that paralysis that comes with, seeing all the steps and not knowing the next right thing. We've talked about before doing the next right thing. This is more about how to come to that conclusion and just go ahead and, go ahead and do what needs to be done. I almost used a colloquialism about a bathroom break, let's say. So let's go there. Confidence does not mean that you always know the right answer. That's one thing that you need to know right off the bat. Nobody expects even, and should not expect, a leader to have all the right answers. What they should expect of a leader is to ask the right questions, to try to investigate the right decision to be made, and then trust themselves to make the call. You talk about the 80-20 rule all the time, Pareto's principle, whatever you want to say. You're only ever, in best case scenarios, going to have 80% of the information you need to make the decision. And you are going to have to count on your intuition, your preparedness, all the other things that you do to make the right call. And so you have to trust yourself in those 80-20 situations. So let me tell you about a story about a CEO by the name of Chris Nassetta. And this was back in 2007. Hilton Hotels was acquired by a private equity firm, BlackRock, for $26 billion. And this was right before the global financial crisis. So 2007 going into 2008, obviously we went into a huge recession, borderline getting to the depression word in that 2008 time frame when the big housing crisis kind of crashed. And it just, we had adjustable rate mortgages, we had all the things in the Big Short, and the economy was really poor. And the fact is that the hospitality industry suffered just as much in that, right? Hilton is a hotel chain company. It's primarily what they do. And travel was froze. There were budgets that were cut in the federal government, and it looked pretty foggy for them. But Chris Nassetta stepped in as the new CEO there, and he realized that the right thing to do was to take their Beverly Hills headquarters and move somewhere that was less expensive, where they could have a different cultural focus, being a little closer to the, for lack of a better term, the blue collar worker and the white collar entry level worker, which is kind of where Hilton has focused a lot of its brands. And their culture had become stagnant, and they were not growing fast enough. One of the things they talk about with hotel chains is how many rooms do you have, how many brands do they offer, where can you where are your properties, are you in the hot areas? And so what did he do? Without all the information available, he made a call, and the call was, hey, we're going to go from Beverly Hills, California, a very high-end, popular place to be in the 90s and early 2000s, and we're going to move over to McLean, Virginia. And it was a unpopular opinion for some, and it was bold and it was risky, but at the end of the day, it paid off. And here's why it paid off. It became a turning point where they were able to cut costs, speed up innovation because they had more access on the East Coast to more people, and quite frankly, at a lower salary rate as well. And that allowed them to climb their way back up to the top and become, again, one of the world's leading hospitality brands. In the fog of this very crazy time of 2007, 2008, he was able to make the right decision, trusting his intuition, and he's continued to be the CEO all the way through 2025, which means he went through not only one really tough time in the economy, but also through 2020 when hotels obviously were not a big thing, and there were a lot of decisions that had to be made during COVID. So that was one of those times where he trusted his intuition, made the right call, and the company grew because of it. And here's another thing I'll tell you as a person who works in a company that there is a CEO. When you are questioning the decision-making of people at the highest end of management, in the CEO, in the director, and the vice president, a little known secret, they are not that much different from you in terms of their faults, their failings, their questioning of every decision they make. But when you get to that level, there will come a time in your career as you work your way up that you will start to feel like there's no right decision. When you hit that point, what has happened is you are now a stakeholder who is balancing priorities. And you're not going to be able to make just the quote unquote, just a right decision, because every decision you make is going to have a negative impact as well as the positive impact. It's very rare as you rise up the ranks of a company, a business, as your business gets bigger, that you're just going to be able to make decisions purely that only help things. Most of your decisions are going to have some downsides. And you're really trying to balance, how do I get the most good out of this with the least amount of negative out of this while being ethical, right? So you're saying, I'm going to be ethical. That's step one. And then you're making the decision. But let me switch gears and go into another story for you. And this one's just for fun. But you tell me if you can tell by the story what movie this is based off of. So let's switch the scene. Same principle, different world. It's a city split by class, race, and silence. There lived a young man who had nothing but a pen, a beat, and a voice. He worked a dead-end job by day, and by night he vanished into a world few dared to enter, the underground battle circuit. There in dimly lit basements and behind chain-link fences, words were weapons, and hesitation meant defeat. He was an outsider, the wrong background, wrong side of the tracks. No one believed in him, and no one believed he belonged. And truth be told, neither did he. He choked in his first battle, froze under pressure, laughed off stage, but he kept writing, kept rhyming, kept showing up because deep down he knew the fight wasn't just for respect, it was for identity, for purpose, and for a way out. Then came one final shot, the tournament, the crowd, the heat. One by one, he faced his rivals despite their too tight tank tops. And this time, he didn't run from his past. He owned it. He flipped every weakness into strength, every insult into a punchline. And by the end, the room was silent, not out of disrespect, but awe. He walked away not just with victory, but with freedom, because in that moment, he chose not to wait, not to fold, not to fear. He chose to lose himself in what he was made to do. So ask yourself, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted in one moment, would you capture it or just let it slip? Anyway, yeah, so that is Eminem. That was just a little funny. I thought about it. I said, hey, ChatGPT, what's a cultural reference that goes well with this? And I'd already kind of thought that we would get lose yourself, and that's what came up. So, but again, let's talk about the leadership lesson in all of this and why we're talking through this. The fog is normal. You are going to face the fog of decision making. It's going to happen. And we all want certainty. We want to know every little play that we make. If you've ever played a video game, you played Red Dawn or Counter-Strike or StarCraft or any of those, or League of Legends in today's world, you know about the fog of war. You can't see what your competition is doing, what your enemy is doing in that case. Real leadership happens in that fog. You have to make a call without all the right answers, and you will not know how it's going to turn out, but you have to be bold in your decision making, because confidence does not come from having all the answers. It comes from trusting your values, making the call, and being willing to adjust your course and adapt and overcome as things change and correct as you go. Don't be so committed to the one decision that you thought every thought that could be thought. No, you haven't, because you can't. And there's some things you will not know until you get down the road a little bit. So how do you build that confidence? That's what we came to do. How do we get unstuck? How do we get out of that cycle, that treadmill, get off the treadmill of decision making? The way you do it, one, you know your non-negotiables. What matters most in a particular situation? What is the most important thing? What are you trying to solve? And you use your values, and that's why it's important. You have good moral character and values, and you have shaped those over time, and you've tested those to make sure that under pressure, you're going to be able to answer the call of keeping those values. But what matters most to you? In Nicetta's point, it was to reinvent the company and protect their future. And the way they were able to do that is by lowering the cost and increasing innovation, by moving out of a place that had become stagnant for them. They needed to think differently, so they needed to actually move where they were headquartered. And at the time, everybody came into the office, right? There wasn't as much remote work back in 2007. So you had to actually physically move the headquarters in order to gain that cultural difference. If you're in a situation in war and people that are leaders in those positions, it may be, hey, we may have to reroute the convoy that we're taking through here. Why? Because there may be IEDs along the road. I remember a lot of stories from Jocko Willink when he's talking about that is you have to make those calls in the fog of literal war in those cases and make a decision based on the things you've experienced before. If you have a team member who's going, something feels off, something doesn't look right ahead. I see cars on the side of the road where maybe cars shouldn't be, or maybe there's 3 in a row and that doesn't make a lot of sense. We need to reroute the convoy. That's a big decision because you've mapped that entire road and you may not have mapped the alternate route. I'm sure Jocko and their team sure had, but you have to make those calls. And in that case, it's the worst thing that can happen is that we end up on the side of this road with a bomb and people are dying. Okay, you're not, most people on that are going to listen to this podcast, you're not going to make decisions that have those sorts of stakes. So because of that, I want you to be less scared of making the right call, of making a call and then pivoting as needed. So know your non-negotiables. What am I trying to accomplish? What's the number one priority? And then move from there. Second, accept the fog. Know that you're not going to have all the answers and admit it to your team, to the people that you're working with. Say, look, these are the facts as we know them today. Here is how things look to us, but we may have to pivot tomorrow because this could happen or this could happen. Depending on that, we'll make the decision at that time. But right now, here's what we have. And then you let people know what we're going to do, why we think it's the next best step. And then if things change, that you will come back to the table. Don't be scared. Leave that room. And then, of course, decide and then adapt. Decide on what you're going to do and then adapt as things come. Confidence leaders, they don't need perfect clarity. And I'm telling you, you don't need to be falsely humble. You do need to be humble enough to admit when you may be wrong. Yes. But you don't need to be falsely humble. Do not truncate the idea as you're saying it. Do not defeat it as you're saying it. Oh, well, this might not be the best idea. No, you can say stuff that if you want to temper what you're saying. Have you considered? Have we considered? I think this would be the best way. You give room by saying, hey, what I'm hearing you tell me is, repeat back to them what you think they're saying. And because of that, here's what I think the best decision is in this particular moment. And then don't fear mistakes. Fear standing still and not making a decision. Now, sometimes being still is a decision, and you will have to make that one. And don't do like me. Don't make decisions at 11:30 at night. Don't write emails at 11:30 at night. You can sleep on those emails unless they're urgent and they're very important that they be answered right then. Sleep on it, because I promise you the other person is probably not losing any sleep, and you're going to lose sleep. That happened to me earlier this week. So how do I want you to build this? How do you test yourself? For the next 24 hours, find one thing you've been waiting to make a decision on. Hey, maybe it's a house project. Maybe it's something you wanted to do. And I'll give you an example of one that I made this weekend. But big or small, just move, make a call, trust your intuition, and get it done. For example, I get huge anxiety about putting holes in walls. Don't like it. Hate it. Don't like hanging pictures. They always end up unlevel. You don't like where they are. They may fall down. You didn't get a stud. The picture's really heavy. Whatever it is, I'm always thinking through everything. It's off center. It's not, doesn't end up level when I'm done with it. Then what do? I'm putting another hole in the wall, or maybe it's not the right height. This weekend, I'm downstairs and I'm like, hey, I got to make a decision. Like, I got to make a call. Jenny wants this skylight calendar thing hung on the wall so the kids can, check off their tasks. It's by the way, good idea, good investment. If you've got little kids and you want them to follow a chore chart, it's a good way to get it done. But at some point I just said, you know what, we got to make a decision. So I got her to come down, check what I was going to do. And I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. And instead of it taking me 3 days or 2 weeks of just sitting around stewing on the idea, we just got it done. Went over, had to drill a hole through a piece of metal. Shout out to Troy, who donated some tools to me. I had the right tool to be able to drill through metal, and all of a sudden we had this thing up and running in, the next day or next hour, whatever it was. It was very quick. But just move. Make a decision and just move. But make that decision knowing what is the most valuable thing, what's the most important thing to me in this moment. And then 2, accepting the fog that you're going to have. And then 3, that you're going to see those mistakes are going to happen and you're going to have to pivot. It's okay. It's going to be all right. You have to make a decision. All right, so now we're going to transition to the verse of the day. I've pounded that, been on my soapbox enough, I guess. The verse of the day is James 1:5. In James 1:5, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. So that's another important thing that you need to know. Let's call it the bonus tip of the day. You do not have to decide alone. There are other people that have been through things before. Pray about it. Seek wisdom and guidance from those that have been through the experience before. There is no teacher like life and experience. Those two things will teach you a ton. And if there are other people that have been through the same sort of situation, seek their counsel, assuming that they are somebody who you're close with, cares about you, you know their motives, they don't have any ulterior motives. Make that decision, seek the wisdom, and then go and boldly get it done. I want you to just step out boldly today, knowing what you know and knowing what you're capable of. Do not be scared to make decisions. Do not be scared to be confident in who you are and who you're going to be in the future. With that, that is a wrap for today. That's the lesson. Confidence will grow through action. Take some action. Trust your gut. Take the leap and lead with courage, because we're all here as the Drive Tribe. We know the motto is make hard choices so we don't have to make excuses. Make the right choices and do the hard thing so we don't have to make excuses in the future. I love y'all. I want you to be as successful as you can be today. Sorry about missing Tuesday. Hope you'll forgive me. We're going to have another great week. I'm going to have probably a morning session tomorrow, maybe even a lunchtime session. So tune in for that. If there's anything you want to talk about, any tips you want to drop in the comments, feel free to do that. But we've come to that point where
at the end of the day, the day got